In the spring of 2022, something happened inside a courtroom in Fairfax County, Virginia, that had never happened before in the history of the American legal system.
It's not about her doing films. How do you think she got Aquaman, sir?
A defamation trial between two Hollywood actors, a case that legal experts widely predicted would be settled quietly out of court, became the single most watched live event on the internet.
Help the world, Johnny. Help him, Johnny Depp. Johnny Depp, man, I'm a victim of domestic violence.
Yes.
Not a Super Bowl, not a presidential debate, not a Netflix finale. A courtroom. At its peak, the Depp versus Heard trial attracted an average of 9 million viewers per day across streaming platforms, with individual live streams on YouTube generating hundreds of millions of views. Social media posts tagged with the trial generated over 25 billion impressions on TikTok alone by the time the verdict was read. And somewhere behind the spectacle, behind the testimony, the memes, the viral moments, a machine was running. A content economy, a legal PR industry, a reputation reconstruction business. And it was making extraordinary amounts of money. The trial economy. How a defamation case became a media business.
In my life.
And this is horrible for me to sit here, relive everything.
Chapter 1. The setup. Why this trial was different. To understand how a 6-week defamation trial became a content economy, you first have to understand what made this case structurally different from every high-profile trial that came before it. The O.J. Simpson trial in 1995 was televised. It drew enormous ratings. At its peak, an estimated 150 million Americans tuned in to watch the verdict, roughly 57% of the entire US population at the time. But that was television, passive, scheduled, one screen, one channel. The Depp versus Heard trial arrived in a completely different media environment. By 2022, YouTube had 2.6 billion monthly active users. TikTok had surpassed 1 billion monthly active users. Twitch, a platform built for live streaming, was hosting hundreds of thousands of simultaneous streams on any given day. The architecture for mass simultaneous live consumption already existed. The trial didn't create the audience, it just gave the audience something to watch. But there was something else, something that made this trial uniquely, almost perfectly designed for the attention economy. The courthouse allowed cameras. In most federal courts and many state courts, cameras are prohibited. Judges regularly block live footage, citing concerns about witness intimidation, jury influence, and the integrity of the proceedings. Virginia's Fairfax County Circuit Court allowed full video coverage. And the moment that decision was made, every content creator, every media company, every live streaming platform understood exactly what was about to happen. According to media analyst Evan Shapiro, writing in Variety in May 2022, the Depp versus Heard trial was the first legal proceeding in history to be natively designed, not just televised, for the streaming era. What does natively designed for streaming mean in practice? It means 8-hour continuous daily sessions that could be clipped, edited, memed, and repackaged across every platform simultaneously. It means real-time audience reaction and commentary running parallel to the testimony. It means an endless supply of fresh content, every day for 6 consecutive weeks.
Amber, what in the are you doing?
For the content economy, this was not a trial. It was a live, serialized drama with a guaranteed ending. And the numbers that followed were staggering. Chapter 2: The live stream economy. Who made money and how much? Let's talk about the money, because this is where the story stops being about celebrity gossip and starts being about a genuinely new economic model.
Okay. I've got to see a few more of these. Oh my God.
Layer 1: The platforms. YouTube was the primary beneficiary of the trial's viewership. The platform's advertising model, which pays creators between $3 and $10 per 1,000 views for general content, and between $15 and $50 per 1,000 views for high CPM categories like legal, business, and finance content, meant that the trial occupied one of the most valuable advertising categories on the entire platform. Legal content is expensive to advertise against. Law firms, financial services companies, insurance providers, these are advertisers with large budgets bidding aggressively for eyeballs. When you combine that advertiser profile with 9 million daily viewers, the revenue math becomes significant very quickly.
Today we're gonna watch Johnny Depp be an absolute legend in court. Hashtag justice for Johnny Depp. We love you, Johnny.
Estimate: if we apply a conservative $15 CPM to 500 million total trial-related YouTube views, the platform generated approximately $7.5 million in advertising revenue from trial content alone. That is a conservative floor, not a ceiling. Layer 2: The creators. This is where the economics get genuinely interesting. A new category of legal commentary creator exploded during the trial. Channels that had previously attracted audiences in the tens of thousands suddenly found themselves hosting hundreds of thousands, and in some cases millions, of daily viewers. Law and Crime Network, a media company that specializes in live trial coverage, reported that its YouTube channel gained over 1 million new subscribers during the 6 weeks of the trial, one of the fastest organic growth rates ever recorded for a legal media brand. Individual commentary creators, lawyers, media analysts, and cultural commentators who built audiences by providing real-time trial analysis saw their channels multiply in value overnight. Several creators who entered the trial with under 100,000 subscribers exited with over 500,000, dramatically increasing their long-term advertising revenue potential and their ability to attract brand sponsorships. According to data from Social Blade, at least 6 YouTube channels focused on trial commentary crossed the 1 million subscriber threshold during or immediately after the proceedings.
You say hi. My dog followed me.
Layer 3: TikTok and the clip economy. TikTok operated as the distribution arm of the trial economy. Short clips, a sharp exchange between attorneys, a dramatic piece of evidence, a moment of visible emotion, would be extracted from the 8-hour live stream, edited down to 60 seconds, and uploaded by thousands of creators simultaneously. The best clips achieved tens of millions of views within hours. TikTok videos tagged #DeppHeardTrial accumulated over 25 billion views before the verdict was read. To put that number in context, that is roughly 3 views for every human being currently alive on Earth. The clip economy meant that creators who never watched a single full day of testimony could still monetize the trial. They just needed to find the 90-second moment that would travel. This created a content supply chain. The courthouse produced raw material. The live streamers processed it into long-form commentary. The clip creators refined it into short-form distribution. And the advertising platforms monetized every single layer.
Primal instinct is to kind of duck and cover.
Layer 4: traditional media. Legacy media, television networks, print publications, digital news outlets, also experienced significant traffic spikes during the trial. According to ComScore, news websites covering the trial saw an average 31% increase in daily unique visitors during the proceedings compared to their pre-trial baselines. The trial was, in the language of media economics, a rising tide that lifted most boats. Every platform that could cover it did, and every platform that did benefited financially. Chapter 3. Legal PR Strategy. The courtroom as brand management. Now here is where the story gets significantly more complex. Because while platforms and creators were counting advertising revenue, the two people at the centre of this trial were running an entirely different kind of economic calculation. And to understand it, you need to understand a concept that has quietly become one of the most important disciplines in modern celebrity economics. Legal PR. Legal PR is not new. High-profile defendants have employed communications professionals alongside their legal teams for decades. But the Depp versus Heard trial represented a qualitative shift in how legal PR operates, and a dramatic expansion of what it can accomplish. Traditional legal PR works like this. A publicist manages media access. They control the narrative outside the courtroom, issuing statements, scheduling interviews, managing the client's public image, while the legal process runs its course largely in private. The Depp versus Heard trial inverted that model entirely. The courtroom became the PR strategy. Let's examine the Depp side first, because it represents the more deliberate and, from a business strategy perspective, the more instructive case. By the time the trial began in April 2022, Johnny Depp's career was in genuine crisis. He had been dropped from the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise, the role that had generated an estimated $300 million in personal earnings over his career, according to Forbes. He had been replaced in the Fantastic Beasts franchise after losing a UK libel case against The Sun newspaper in 2020, in which a British judge ruled that the newspaper's characterisation of him as a wife-beater was substantially true. Depp's professional losses were staggering. According to industry analyst estimates published by Variety, the combined value of the franchise roles he lost, measured by potential future earnings, exceeded $22.5 million. From a pure business standpoint, Depp was not simply a man seeking justice. He was a brand in freefall, using a public trial as a vehicle for brand rehabilitation. And the strategy was remarkably sophisticated. According to a detailed analysis by crisis communications firm Temin & Company, Depp's legal team made several highly deliberate choices that transformed the trial into an effective PR campaign. First, they chose a Virginia venue specifically because it allowed cameras. This was not an accident of jurisdiction. Virginia was selected in part because of its media access rules. Second, Depp's personal demeanour on the stand was carefully managed. He was relaxed, humorous, self-deprecating. He made jokes. He drew the courtroom to laughter. This was documented extensively by behavioural communications experts who noted the contrast with Heard's more formal presentation. Third, Depp's team engaged actively with the online community that was forming around the trial. Fan accounts were not discouraged. Merchandise was not suppressed. The organic groundswell of public support was allowed and arguably encouraged to build. Dr. Davia Temin, one of America's leading crisis communications experts, described Depp's approach in a published analysis as the most effective live reputation rehabilitation in the history of celebrity PR, conducted entirely inside a courtroom. Chapter 4. When the PR strategy fails, the Heard case study. To be analytically complete, because this is a business analysis, not a verdict endorsement, we need to examine why Amber Heard's legal PR strategy failed by the metrics of reputation economics. And the answer is instructive precisely because it illustrates the limits of what legal PR can accomplish. By the time Heard's team recognized the scale of the online narrative forming against their client, primarily on TikTok and YouTube, the content ecosystem had already developed its own momentum. According to a Reuters Institute study published in 2022, pro-Depp content on TikTok during the trial period outnumbered pro-Heard content by a ratio of approximately 5-1. This imbalance was not simply organic audience preference. It reflected a structural dynamic in how algorithmic content distribution works. Content that generates strong emotional responses, specifically content that makes audiences feel righteous, satisfied, or entertained, travels further and faster on algorithmic platforms than content that is complex, morally ambiguous, or sympathetic to a less popular narrative. In simple terms, the memes were funnier on one side. And in the attention economy, funny travels faster than nuanced. Heard's post-trial communication strategy, a series of high-profile interviews, including a primetime appearance on NBC's Today Show, was widely assessed by PR professionals as miscalculated. According to a post-trial analysis, Heard's Today interview generated a 73% negative sentiment response on social media, effectively amplifying the negative narrative rather than countering it. The lesson here is not about guilt or innocence. It is about the mechanics of reputation management in the algorithmic age. Once an audience has formed a narrative, particularly an audience of millions that has invested weeks of attention in a live proceeding, that narrative is extraordinarily difficult to dislodge through traditional media channels. The internet had rendered its verdict before the jury did. And no PR strategy, however well-funded, has yet developed a reliable method for reversing a verdict delivered by 25 billion TikTok views. Chapter 5. Reputation Reconstruction. The industry behind the aftermath. The Depp versus Heard trial did not just generate revenue during the proceedings. It seeded an entire downstream industry of reputation reconstruction services, and it dramatically expanded the market for what crisis communications professionals now call narrative rehabilitation. Let's look at the scale of that industry. The global reputation management market was valued at approximately $8.9 billion in 2022, according to Grandview Research, and is projected to reach $16.5 billion by 2030, growing at a compound annual growth rate of nearly 8%. That growth is being driven in significant part by an accelerating recognition among high-net-worth individuals, public figures, and corporations that reputation is not merely an abstract asset. It is a quantifiable financial one. The Depp case put a precise dollar figure on that proposition. A study by the Reputation Institute found that for celebrities and public figures with significant commercial endorsement and franchise income, a 10-point decline in public reputation score correlates with an average revenue loss of between $3 million and $8 million per year. Depp's experience demonstrated the inverse. A dramatic reputation recovery, achieved through a highly public legal proceeding, translated directly into commercially measurable brand value restoration. This has had a visible effect on how crisis communications firms are now positioning their services. Several top-tier PR firms have since expanded their legal affairs practices. embedding communications professionals directly into legal teams from the earliest stages of high-profile litigation, rather than treating PR as a downstream cleanup operation after the legal proceedings conclude. The legal industry itself has also begun adapting. Law schools, including Harvard, Georgetown, and USC, have added dedicated modules on media strategy and public narrative management to their curriculum, reflecting the growing recognition that in a world of live-streamed proceedings, courtroom performance is inseparable from public perception management. And there is a deeper, more uncomfortable dimension to this evolution. When the courtroom becomes a content platform, when legal strategy is explicitly designed to generate a favourable public narrative, the boundary between the justice system and the entertainment industry begins to blur. Judge Penny Azkarate, who presided over the Depp versus Heard trial, stated in a post-trial interview that the volume of social media influence on the proceedings was unprecedented and deeply concerning, citing specific instances where jurors had to be shielded from online commentary. This is the externality that the trial economy produced, and that nobody in the content business has a financial incentive to discuss. The same virality that made the trial the most lucrative live event on the internet also made it one of the most difficult to conduct with judicial integrity. Chapter 6. The Bigger Picture. What the trial economy tells us about media in 2024 and beyond. The Depp versus Heard trial was not a one-off anomaly. It was a preview. The economic mechanics that produced $7.5 million in YouTube advertising revenue, minted dozens of new media personalities, and generated a measurable return on investment for one of Hollywood's most expensive reputation crises, those mechanics are not going away. They are, in fact, accelerating. The global live streaming market was valued at $1.49 billion in 2022 and is projected to reach $4.26 billion by 2028, growing at a compound annual growth rate of 19.1%, according to Markets and Markets research. Legal content is one of the fastest growing categories within that market. Searches for trial livestream on YouTube increased by 420% between 2020 and 2023, according to Google Trends data. The audience appetite that the Depp trial revealed did not dissipate when the verdict was read. It redirected to other trials, other courtrooms, other defendants. And here is the critical business insight. The Depp trial demonstrated that legal proceedings have a CPM profile that rivals premium financial and business content, the most valuable advertising categories on digital platforms. This is not intuitive. Courts are not traditionally associated with high-value commercial audiences. But think about who watches trial coverage: legal professionals, business executives, people with disposable income and high educational attainment who are deeply invested in questions of truth, evidence, institutional credibility, and social justice. And the platforms know it. YouTube has since expanded its partnerships with legal media companies, signing distribution deals with Law and Crime Network and Court TV that guarantee dedicated shelf space for live trial coverage within the platform's premium content tiers. This is the industrialization of a phenomenon that the Depp trial proved was commercially viable at scale. The courtroom has become a content studio, legal proceedings have become programming, and the justice system, intentionally or not, has been absorbed into the attention economy. Chapter 7. The Strategy Lessons. What business learns from the trial economy. So what does any of this mean for business strategy outside the celebrity ecosystem? More than you might expect. Lesson 1. Public proceedings are now media assets, and they should be treated as such. Any publicly conducted dispute, litigation, regulatory hearings, congressional testimony, arbitration, now exists simultaneously as a legal proceeding and a content event. Organizations that develop sophisticated communication strategies for public proceedings will outperform those that treat them as purely legal matters. The reputational upside for organizations that perform well in public proceedings, and the downside for those that perform poorly, is now amplified by orders of magnitude compared to the pre-streaming era. Lesson 2. The speed of algorithmic narrative formation has permanently outpaced traditional PR response timelines. The Heard team's experience illustrates a phenomenon that every corporate communications professional now needs to understand. By the time a traditional PR response is drafted, approved, and deployed, the algorithmic audience has already formed its verdict. According to a 2023 study by Edelman, negative viral narratives about public figures or brands reach 90% of their eventual total audience within the first 72 hours of breaking. After that, the marginal impact of reactive communications drops dramatically. Organizations need real-time narrative monitoring and pre-built response infrastructure, not 48-hour deliberation cycles. Lesson 3. Reputation is a measurable financial asset and should be managed accordingly. The Depp case established with unusual precision the dollar value of reputation recovery for a high-profile individual. For corporations, the math is even starker. According to the World Economic Forum, approximately 25% of a company's market value is directly attributable to its reputation. For large companies, that represents billions in value that can be created or destroyed by public narrative. Reputation is not a soft asset. It is a balance sheet item. The Depp trial, more than any other single event in recent media history, made that truth impossible to ignore. The verdict on the trial: economy. In April 2022, a defamation trial began in a Virginia courtroom. 6 weeks later, it had generated hundreds of millions of streaming views. It had created a new class of media personality. It had produced measurable advertising revenue across every major digital platform. It had rehabilitated one of Hollywood's most damaged brands and demonstrated with clinical precision the financial value of reputation. And it had done something else. Something more significant and more permanent. It proved that in the age of algorithmic media, the courtroom is not separate from the economy of attention. It is part of it. The justice system did not change. The economics of digital content did not change. But the intersection of those two forces in a Virginia courtroom over 6 weeks in front of 9 million daily viewers revealed a new economic reality that the media industry, the legal profession, and the corporate communications world are still absorbing. Public narrative is now produced in real time, at industrial scale, by millions of simultaneous participants. The organizations and individuals that understand this, that build strategies around it, that treat reputation as the balance sheet asset it genuinely is, will operate with a structural advantage over those that don't. The gavel has fallen. The economy of the courtroom is open for business.